The Galactic Coalition expected sheer panic. When their declaration of war finally reached the Sol system, every species watching the transmission leaned closer to their screens, just waiting to see humanity finally break. Instead, Earth's response was confusing. There was no emergency broadcast, no mass evacuations, no frantic pleas for negotiation. Just one short, simple reply, sent on an open channel for all to see. Acknowledged. Combat exercise parameters received. High Commander Zythar of the Coalition blinked all four of his eyes in disbelief. Exercise, he hissed to his subordinates. This is a formal declaration of annihilation. On the diplomatic channel, the human representatives didn't look frightened. They didn't even look surprised. One of them, an older woman with silver hair and a calm, relaxed posture, just tilted her head slightly. Right, she said, her voice steady. That's what we said. The Coalition had prepared for this war for decades. Humanity was a new species on the block, barely spacefaring by galactic standards. Their ships were crude, their weapons unsophisticated, and their population was seen as dangerously reckless. They had been classified as Category 3 combatants, aggressive, adaptable, but ultimately manageable. A problem that could be solved with overwhelming force. When the Coalition fleet entered Sol space 3 days later, they expected to meet resistance. What they found was preparation. Human fleets were already deployed, but not in any recognizable defensive formation. They were in loose, flexible patterns that made no sense to veteran Coalition tacticians. Some of their ships carried outdated hull designs, others looked purely experimental. A few didn't even match any known human ship registries. Are these civilian vessels? One of Zythar's officers asked, baffled. No, Zythar said slowly, a cold feeling creeping into his gut. They're letting us see everything before the first shot was even fired. Another transmission arrived from Earth. Reminder, this exercise includes live fire simulations, asymmetric tactics, and adaptive response scenarios. Please confirm readiness. The Coalition didn't bother to reply. They opened fire. The first volley should have crippled the human vanguard. Instead, the human ships scattered not randomly, but like a flock of birds dodging a hawk. Missiles detonated in empty space. Energy lances sliced through the vacuum where targets had been just milliseconds before. Then, the humans responded, not with overwhelming force, but with experimentation. Coalition sensors went haywire as human ships began doing things that no sane combat doctrine would ever allow. They cut their engines mid-maneuver, venting superheated plasma directly into space to throw off heat seekers. They deliberately exposed weak hull sections, only for hidden shield emitters or armor plates to activate at the very last moment. Why would they do that? An officer shouted in frustration. Zythar's blood ran cold. They're testing us, he realized. Human strike craft swarmed like insects, probing defenses, retreating, and changing their tactics with every single engagement. Coalition countermeasures worked exactly once, then they never worked again. Within hours, human commanders had completely mapped the Coalition's response times, weapon recharge cycles, targeting priorities, and even their command hierarchies. This wasn't a war, it was a training drill. Back on Earth, the news didn't even interrupt the regular programming. This just in, a human reporter said calmly, looking into the camera. Today's multinational combat exercise has officially entered Phase 3. Military officials advise civilians that there is no cause for concern. No cause for concern. Meanwhile, in orbit, Coalition ships began falling. Not destroyed outright, just disabled. Their engines were fried. Their weapon systems were locked. Their command ships were isolated and completely surrounded. Aboard his flagship, Zythar watched as a human cruiser drifted closer. Its hull was covered in painted symbols and bold lettering. One phrase translated automatically, "Live training unit, do not remove." A final transmission came through. Exercise complete. Performance evaluation pending. Zythar slammed his claws against the console in fury. You cannot do this. This was a war. The human commander appeared on his screen, young, alert, and disturbingly cheerful. From your perspective, he agreed with a nod. From ours, Tuesday, Zythar demanded to know why. Why hadn't humanity taken the threat of extinction seriously? The human paused for a moment, then shrugged. Because we've had worse, he said simply. Civil wars, world wars, cold wars. We've run simulated wars, and had training accidents more lethal than this. He leaned forward slightly, his eyes sharp. You declared war. We saw an opportunity to stress-test new doctrines. Silence filled the bridge of the Coalition flagship. Finally, in a quiet, defeated voice, Zythar asked, what happens now? The human commander smiled not cruelly, but with the confidence of a teacher. Now he said, you attend the after-action review. The Coalition would later reclassify humanity. Not as Category 3, but as Category 0, a species that does not panic when faced with extinction. A species that does not rage. A species that does not fear war. Because to them, war is just another exercise. And they are always training. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this story, be sure to hit that like button and subscribe for more. See you in the next one.